Hello, everyone. My name is Trish McCabe. Welcome to Conversations from the School of Hard Knocks. Today, I have my guest, Pasha Pyro, joining me again. Today, we're going to do the second segment on the topic of projection. And thank you. Yay. Here we go again. I'm so excited.
Always a perfect
Pasha,
day.
yes, I had the pleasure of doing this first segment on Pasha's channel, YNet7. I highly recommend it. He shares a lot of information there, very informative and empowering information on his podcast. Um, and here we are. We're going to do a segment on projection. Some years ago, I read a book. I may have mentioned this in other podcasts called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. There we go, by Debbie Ford.
I know the light is messing with it, but that's what it
Yeah,
looks
there
like.
you go. It's a really good book for those of you that don't understand the inner workings of projection. And even we're still, it's a work in progress, I think, until what? We die, really.
Yeah.
The way projection works is really deep. And you could be doing it and not even realizing you're doing it. So anyways, to start off, you've been reading the book and I want to hear what you have to say, what sticks out to you, however you want to go with this. I'd like to hear it.
So it's actually an amazing book. It really, I like the way, I haven't completed it yet, but so far the title is kind of like self-explanatory. Once you read it, you'll start to understand why the title is that, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, because she's speaking about how we like kind of want to disown our shadow, so to speak. But in our shadow is really all the parts of us that is crying out to make us whole again. You know, things that we've locked away, things that we've thought we didn't like about ourselves. And then the projection comes into play because them things that we despise in other people, so to speak, is really a reflection of things that live inside of us that we're maybe like at some point hated about ourselves or was in disbelief about ourselves are. So the projection is that you wind up throwing it onto the other people around us. And it kind of like as reverse psychologists say, like, that can't be me. That can't be what I'm doing. This is, look at how evil y'all are and look how bad or whatever it is that you're saying to people, or thinking about people in those circumstances. So yeah, really taking the time to dive deep into your shadow. And she had a whole chapter on there about the castle, which I had to do a video on. I was so inspired by. Found out I did a videos on a similar topic like
Yeah, that
years
was so
ago.
cool.
And I
How
was like,
cosmic.
right. Always the perfect day. So this is very timely because sometimes in life you need to look back on yourself as who you were to see the growth or maybe to see things that would benefit you, whether it's positive or maybe negative things that you now have a different view upon now because you've grown so much. So yeah, dive deep into your shadows, find the things that you felt like, you know, you're judging other people's for. It pretty much represents something that lives inside of you that would make you whole again, and see what value that would add to your life.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I've read these pages that you were so kind to send to me via text message because I haven't had a chance. I got so much going on to get the book and review. It's definitely on my list of things to do this week. In the meantime, you sent me those pages and I really just love it.
Yeah.
I really identified with so much that she says in terms of, you know, the shadow part of ourself is the things that we're taught when we're little that are bad and wrong. Um, what did she say? She said, you see someone spitting and you're like, oh, disgusting. And you get all rattled and upset. But if you really get truthful with yourself and you look at your reaction and you say, have I ever spit before?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you might have even thought about spitting or whatever, or maybe somebody else you loved spit and you never addressed it, even though it bothered you. But anyways, when you look at that and that judgment about it, and you look honestly with yourself and say, yes, I've done that. There's a gift in it. I love that. And what would you say the gift is when she
I
says that?
think that's a great question. I think, and also on the back end of that example you gave, she also commented that if you see someone spit, for example, and it didn't bother you, then you know that you're at peace with that in your heart and with yourself. You know what I mean?
You don't have a
For any other,
judgment about it.
yeah. Now to answer your question, I think what that does is I think that's part of what it takes when I think that's part of the atmosphere of being free. You know what I mean?
Yes.
When you're in consideration of the infinity, which is why I always say I'm equation versus variables, and we between our two channels, we done talked about that a good bit. But when you can see all of infinity, you're free from those reactions and those emotions and those energies of which is basically a result of some sort of conformity. Like when you were just describing it, you said, hey, you might spit yourself, or maybe you had your father that spit, maybe you had someone that chewed and they were always spitting and stuff. You know what I mean? So maybe you don't maybe you associate spit with the chew and you're like, that's going to kill you. So you're mad because they're spit. Whatever it is, when you can see the whole infinity, you're just free to just move through that time and space unscathed, so to speak.
Hindered. Yeah,
Yeah.
unsuffocated. I remember, and I didn't read this, but at some point she talks about holding something in your hand for so long and all the energy that it takes to keep these things buried. These our shadow aspects, our doors in our castles that are boarded up, bad and wrong, because there are gifts in all of them. And which I think our next series should be on the subject of duality and everything. And I think that's going to be really great to cover that, because it really just is so true and directly pertains to what we're talking about. I will use an example with myself. Like, I have found myself yelling about a belligerent politician, and I'll be yelling and arguing, he's nasty and he's this. But I noticed what shifted was I was being belligerent in that moment. While I was talking about how belligerent this politician was, I was also being, and I had to really take a long, honest look at myself and go, oh my gosh. And once I looked at that, and like what she was saying, you really sit with it for a while and say, gosh, I'm belligerent. Wow. But when you integrate it into your being, like what she does a few times, something happens. And that's that freedom that you're talking about. You don't have to try not to be belligerent, or it just doesn't. Yeah, once you embrace it, you're not resisting it anymore. That resistance is gone to the belligerence of anything. Once you understand it, you understand yourself. You're not going to judge it in another person. You go, yeah, I do that too. I get it. That's just it. It is the ultimate freedom to be able to not let that trigger you, not let that get a rise out of you, because you understand it firsthand and you own it. And it's just a whole, there's something that happens. And then also one thing that she says in the book is you suddenly don't attract it either. You've diffused that energy that was tied to that judgment that you had about that behavior. What do you think of that?
I think that's great. There was you're spot on with that, and there was a reference in this one chapter in particular that was on recollecting ourselves. It's the chapter I sent you about, because it started off talking about projection. Like,
yes,
and
you want to read it? If you want to, or
we could probably. It's a good bit of it's a good bit of it's about 12 pages long, so maybe the people can get the book and read it themselves.
okay,
because that way you support the author But I mean, by
Yeah.
all means, we can pull segments out of here and
Yeah,
everything.
segments, not the whole 12. Yeah. Just is there something in there that sticks out to you that really
A lot.
illustrates your point? I know she really does. And I love it. She gets into details, guys, and she really does explain it from a very loving, compassionate place. This is not about bad and wrong. It's about observation.
Yeah. So like there's a spot on there where she would have the she was doing seminars and she had the one lady stand up and was being really nasty to her, and she had the thoughts about her in her mind. And what she said was, once I changed how I felt her, like, because she would spend a lot of time trying to figure out, because it was like a weekly seminar. And she's like, once I
Yes.
changed how I felt about what I thought I was doing, that I thought I wasn't doing, and once I accepted that maybe I was being this type of person or being this way, the next meeting, the person that was giving her all the problems came in with a totally different attitude. And then the following meeting after that, they were still having an amazing relationship all of a sudden out the blue. And then she later on pulled her aside, like in a future meeting or something, and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And she was like, "I don't know. I just walked in one day and I felt
Fell
like
in
you were
love
so
with you.
amazing." Yeah. After she had been like trying to,
Goosebumps.
yeah. So I think that's a great opportunity because it ties into the latter part in the chapter, right? Where she's talking about how people project the greatness of their heroes, right? Which they're really projecting their own greatness, but onto the hero because they don't want to accept that they can be
Oh my gosh.
as great or equally great themselves, right? So what that made me realize, I'll tell you, all that positivity made me realize what we perceive as negativity, right? So it works. Is exactly, that's why I always say, got to consider the infinity. So now when you have a person that's like, the type of stuff we talk about, and some of my Why That 7 channel goes into even more like, who does he think he is, oh my god, type moments for people, right? And so that whole hero explanation really made sense when I started thinking about some of the thoughts I have about, well, why don't more people um appreciate this type of content and dialogue as they do some of the lesser vibrating situations and communications and broadcasts. And I was like, you know what, now it makes sense, because the same way you project your heroes and you can attach to them because of the greatness, right? When they see what we're talking about, it's projecting their shadows into them, right? It's
Yes.
really pulling their shadow to the surface and saying, see this? This is who you really are inside. And they're like, no, no, make it stop. Get away from me. Cut this off. I don't ever want to subscribe to, you know what I mean? But so we got the we got the positive people that are like, yes, I'm in tune with this. This is harmony. This is peace. I want more. But then we got the people who aren't ready for it. And that's why they don't like the stuff that we talk about. The same way the
Yeah,
heroes,
triggers them.
right? The same way the heroes, they're able to project their greatness into it. When a lot of the content that we have on our channels, for the people that want to learn and grow, it's greatness, right? Like, oh, this is I get to learn. But for the people who want to remain stagnant and want to, or they know they lock stuff in they shadow, they know they have locked rooms in their castle, and they purposely don't want to open them. This is kind of like putting a gun to their head almost and saying, unlock the door. And they're like, no, I don't want to. You would have to shoot
Lock
me.
the
You know what
door.
I mean?
No, no.
So it's the same, it's really the same principle. Now we just covering the
It
whole
really is.
spectrum.
Wow, that's
So
really powerful.
the projection is both good and bad on the surface.
Yes. Yeah, oh my gosh, yes. So any unowned trait
Mm-hmm.
is your shadow self. And it could be positive traits as well, not just negative ones. The shadow self is the one you're not aware of. Um, like when you put someone on a pedestal, right? You really admire them, you look up to them. You're negating, if you can see that positive trait in them, it's because you also have it. Not just the negative ones, but the
Mm-hmm.
positive ones too. I love that. Oh, thank you for bringing that up. That's lovely. That's so important because
Yeah.
we do talk about our heroes like, oh, they're over there, and
Mm-hmm.
we don't possess those traits as well. And we do, the good ones too. It's so
Exactly.
true.
I
Yeah.
used to get I used to get asked this question all the time because I spent some time doing photography on a high level, and part of that was event photography. So I worked with a few, about 25 or more different celebrities and stuff. And they used to be with pictures with them and stuff, and they'd be like, well, why aren't you never smiling in the pictures? If I met Will Smith, or if I met Vivica Fox, or if I would have be like, ah, and I was like, yeah, I was just supposed to be there. Like, so it was like business, and there are people just like me too, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
that I understood that at an very early age. So I never really got excited about it, because it's kind of like where you're supposed to be. That's who you are, that's what you're doing. So
And they're just people. You're not working in Hollywood. I worked at the Wyndham Bellagio Hotel. I worked
mhm.
at the Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf on the Sunset Strip. So I was meeting celebrities all the time. And one thing I did was left them alone for one
Mhm.
thing. They just want to have their coffee.
Right.
They just, and people say, well, they shouldn't be famous. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But, they are, and they want to go out and be just like everyone else. And, you know, but it's interesting. I remember standing in line and Keanu Reeves was standing right next to me, and everyone's like, oh my God, oh my God. And it was so cool because I looked at him and he looked at me and I said, how you doing?
Mhm.
And I was like, I'm fine. How you doing? Well, I'm good. That was
Yeah.
it. It was like, and it's actually kind of a good thing when you meet them because you're like, they're real and they are just like anybody else.
Yeah. Have
Right.
the conversation with them like you would.
Yeah. Yes.
Mhm.
And I've had a few of those with a few people. And it's so great. Because you're just like, oh, they get off their pedestal a bit when you meet them and you're able to just talk to them about everyday things,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But I love what you said. I think that's so powerful, about not only not owning the negative traits in other people, but the positive ones as well. That's really important element to
Yeah.
all of this. Um, can you give some kind of example where you projected and it like really opened up your eyes to some things and created like a shift, like what she was talking about in the book when she realized what was going on with
Yeah,
that?
that I think that's kind of like what I was maybe just saying when I was talking about like our broadcast, for example. And it's like doing what we do, right? You I don't know anybody that's doing something positive or anywhere remotely close to what we're trying to do, or we're having these type of discussions, right? That really hasn't that's starting a platform, okay, and trying to grow it, that hasn't questioned themselves as to what are they doing wrong, or what are they doing, how can they improve. Because when you see someone throw booty shaking up on the screen and it gets a million views, or the little baby falls out the stroller and hits his head, like of all the things that could go viral, like that goes viral. Like the dumb stuff goes viral. The shit that don't matter goes viral in the way that maybe I was perceiving it, right? And then when I realized that, when I read that chapter, like that's what I was saying. It's like, oh, well,
Hmm.
the same way they project on their heroes is positive, right? Like, oh yeah, every like the lady you said, the lady said, hey, well, they shouldn't want to be famous if they didn't want the attention. That's because in her mind, she wants the attention. In her mind, she thinks she wants the attention. Like, I would love to be a celebrity and have everybody want to ask me this and talk to me and be like that, until you have to live that shit, right? Because like,
Careful what you ask for.
yeah,
Mhm.
because like I said, I was a local celebrity in Wilmington. Being a photographer and making music and stuff. I got to deal with local, small level celebrity shit. But could you imagine being a worldwide phenomenon and you can't go nowhere and do nothing without 5,000 people wanting to on an autograph sign? Yeah, you say you just was trying to get some coffee at Starbucks, start your day, and now you got a budget for 4 hours because you get mobbed at the coffee shop.
Mobbed.
You know,
Yes.
yeah. So what it was, but to go back to answer your question, I think what happened to me was I was questioning that, like, and I was projecting that onto them, like, not that there was something necessarily wrong with them, but like, why are you running from the truth? I would actually feel like that about people, right? Like, why do you not like the truth? And what it actually is the same way
Mhm.
you project the positive attributes of the hero, and you're like, yeah, I can connect that, right? Is the same repellence, because now when the truth comes, it's not that the people never had the opportunity to be handed the truth before, or not to say that the people didn't know the truth about themselves. It's like the book talked about, where you purposely locked that room away because you didn't want to experience it. And then now what's actually happening is that when we show up, there's certain people that's gonna be like, oh no, here they go again. They're going to put that dark room in front of me that I wanted to lock out of my life. I don't want to be here right now. How do I avoid this? So it's not that they're actually running from the truth itself. It's that the same thing, they're running from what they already ran from before, and we're just an icon of that to them. Or our podcast might be an icon of that to them. So they don't want to know parts of that until they've healed, or something triggers them to go inside their castle and unlock all them doors. So I think that's a good example of maybe something that I was projecting, because I was like, and then in turn, I would just be like, well, let me get rid of them, those people from my life, because they don't like me. Well, it almost makes you feel like they don't like you, or they feel like something's wrong with you. Right. Mm-hmm. But in reality, what it is that they don't like that part of themselves. And then, because that's what we stand on. You and me both stand on honor, integrity. Like, how can you talk
authenticity? Right.
So how can you talk about being honorable to the person that wants to short you, or short people out of, $25, $100 or whatever it is off of a project? Now they're gonna feel some type of way when you come around talking about, yeah, we need to be honorable and we need to be this, and they're gonna be like, oh shit, well, I make my living by deceiving people. You know what I'm saying? So you're gonna get different responses from the truth based on how they feel about it in their life. So there's a bright side to projection. Yeah. And then there's the dark side, but I mean, all contained within the positive promotion of it. You know what I'm saying? If that makes sense.
What I'm getting out of what you said is they were like, no, I don't want that. I want that. And then you were like, no, I don't want that. You were doing the same thing with them right, that they were doing with you. No. Right. So, and you go, oh my God, I'm doing that too.
I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah, I'm doing again. Yeah. It was like I was saying, I was talking about what a belligerent person this politician was while I was being belligerent and unaware of it. And then someone pointed it out to me, actually, you really kind of that behavior looks the same. I'm like, oh my God. And it just is really shocking how just often this happens, because and you and I, we can see all the tentacles and how everything is connected. This is why labels and blanket statements have been very destructive, because they've not allowed us to address behaviors and where they come from. And so what we do is we stuff them down, deny them. Yeah. And here we are addressing them on this other level of, what you said, freedom. Freedom. And your freedom and freeing yourself from these judgments that we've been taught when we're really little about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And so that's created a lot of problems in society and on so many levels. But you said something about judgments, and that's really kind of what it is. It's just yesterday I was on Jeff Brown's page, the writer that I think I tagged you on one of his posts, and he's he's criticizing a spiritual person. I'm not going to say who it is because it doesn't matter. It's really more the scenario. And he's criticizing their book. And this person comes on and is like, you're being judgmental and da, 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 da. And he says, so you're judging me for being judgmental. And it was true. And it's like, you're doing this exact thing you're saying that I'm doing. But then comes the duality part. The word critical or critic was the word that was really what the woman was using. You're being critical. And he's like, well, you're being critical of me. So, but that's a good thing. This is so powerful. What he said, I invite you to critique me. We should be able to critique everything.
Yes.
Everything. He goes, So critique is okay when you're talking about politics, when you're talking about medicine, when you're talking about your family life, whatever, any other, but not in the spiritual community. We're not allowed to criticize spiritual gurus and whatever, and it was a perfect example of what we're talking about here, of how things can get really muddied when you're having these judgments and you're projecting and getting triggered by something you don't like. But it was just really powerful the way that he worded it. I'm like, and a lot of people really got it. And it was just directly pertained to what we're talking about, basically.
Huh. You know what? Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that because it's helping me refine. Like I always say, our talks is hopefully therapeutic to people, and then I always am grateful for the therapy that it provides each of us too.
Yes.
And based off what I just said, I think we're refining that situation because like I just don't understand. I didn't understand why things that were like less value. Well, how do you gauge what's value to one person or another, right? But we're in a state of mind where we understand that this is important for the future of humanity because we're at the cusp, we're at the edge where it's a slippery slope. And if we don't stop the momentum now going this way, all hope is going to be lost forever, basically. It kind of feels like, right? So
Yes.
what you're getting at though, it refined something for me because you said the criticism is open, right? It was open for criticism. And I think that was my biggest like slap in the face is that we're doing this inviting and encouraging the engagement of others, whether even if it's unseen, right? Even if you watch this conversation and you go have a conversation with your family, the value has been added, right? But when you say, "Oh, I don't want to partake in this," and you overlook this, then you're never. I mean, They never allow themselves to be represented in the conversation and the dialogue. But it's whatever fear they have, a fear of maybe being judged by others for what their thoughts are, or maybe they just are anti whatever topic we're on, or whatever the case is that made them say, no, I'm not. I'm going to just pretend like that doesn't exist, right? But let me go share this baby falling out the chair to all my friends and family because I want you to laugh, right? And that's why I'll be like, man, this is like an illness, right?
It
You know
really
what I mean?
is. Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
It's
So
that if you don't, how do I say this without sounding, I don't know it all or whatever.
say it how you mean it.
If it is what it is,
Mhm.
you, yeah, we've just made so many things bad and wrong taboo to
Yeah.
the point where it's become covert. So you say you don't have this, but you covertly do. And
Right.
that's where the danger comes into play with all of this is, I don't do that, but you do. So you have to do it covertly, it's indirect manipulation, things like that. When you can't be real, you have to play a game. When you can't be real, you have to find a sideways door under the radar, under the guise,
Mhm.
to try to get your needs met, which isn't healthy. We're not allowed to be direct. You even see, you'll be direct and someone will say you're being rude. Sometimes you can be
Yeah.
direct and it can be rude, but not always. And this goes back to the blanket statements, why they're so dangerous, and they've
Mhm.
helped perpetuate projection and triggering and the development of our dark side, our suppressed side. Um, because when you get real and you start addressing these things, judgments that you don't have, man, it's like you said, it's so freeing.
Yeah.
You don't have to fight it anymore. You own up to it, you take responsibility, and you're like, okay, cool. It's just this whole, and then also your energy, it opens up this door for people to connect with you,
Right.
right?
Right. And so
Yeah.
and so to wow, to take that even further, so now they're projecting the avoidance factor onto let's say what appears to be us as the individual, but it's really just what we stand for, right? Because I think when you made a good point about the you can't be real, but I think there's people like you and me who and there's people like you and me. I'm not saying we're the only ones out there Of course not. There's people like you and me who have decided, fuck that. I'm gonna be aligned with the truth at all times because that is who I am. I'm just trying to be the most truthful, real version of the realness, trueness that I can be. And so when you do that, when you commit to being true and being in honor, now you walk through those spaces and you're not tiptoeing anymore, but you're boldly being proud of who you are, which is, this is what I stand for, is the truth. And guess what? Sometimes the truth is me being able to tell you I don't know, but when I know, I'm gonna let you know. And then so that makes the people be like, we got to avoid them, right? And so then I think now, based on this conversation, adding clarity is then what happens is because they're projecting the need to avoid us, we in turn avoid them as the
Yes.
success of the projection.
Yes, yes. And so much too, it makes me think of how do I say this? I think what you said back a few beats, it reminded me of something John Gray, who wrote the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, wrote in another book about when you have a judgment about something. A lot of times, if you get real, you'll admit to yourself, I want that. Like, let's say you have a judgment about wealthy people, people
Yeah.
with money. And he used that as like, and you're like, look at these people with the fancy car. But if you get real, you're like, I want that fancy car. And this goes back to, I hope it's not too confusing. It goes back to the blanket statements of, money is the root of all evil. No, the love of money is the root of all evil. And that blanket statement has done a lot of damage because it's made people have a judgment about money and having money.
Exactly.
And thus they don't have any money. They have a judgment about it. They're not going to have a good relationship with money. And this is why when you like when you're poor, for instance, you hear that a lot. People with money, they're just evil, or look at, money is the root of all evil. And that idea, it will keep you poor because you have a judgment about it. It'll stymie you, and it'll keep you from being truthful about what you really desire because you already have a judgment. I can't desire a Porsche, whatever, because that's bad. Those people are,
Right.
But it's not true. It's not how you really feel. It's something that you were taught when you were little. And so then you're going to develop that judgment and not allow it for yourself. In other words, where projection is very toxic is this, if you have a judgment about, and he talks about this in that thread yesterday on Jeff's page of anger. If you have a judgment about anger, you're not going to allow anyone else to be angry either, or you'll just make them bad and wrong. Put them in the, I don't want you. And it's so important because how can you be real and how can you be whole if you're not ever allowed to be angry? And then we wonder why so many people have diseases. I really feel disease is caused by these repressed emotions. They become very toxic and fester and within us. And they're hindering and cause stress because you're hindered. If you think money is the root of all evil, how is that going to affect your daily living, your actions, your goals, what you want in life? How can you get them if you have a judgment about them?
Right.
If that makes any sense.
It absolutely does, because you may not want, like you said, the Porsche that you're feeling like you got, you're disgusted with someone else for having, but if you had the same monetary opportunity, you would get whatever it is that you wanted instead, which for some people may be a home. Some people it may be
Right.
a Maserati instead of the Porsche. You know what I'm saying? But so don't hate on what they did, knowing that you actually want the same opportunity.
Yeah. And it just, so these judgments, like money is the root of all evil, will keep you from having money. It'll keep you from having abundance, And again, I'm so excited because she does talk about this in the book. And I don't know if you've gotten to that point, but she talks about the duality in things. There are negative and positive traits to all things. When you throw the baby out with the bathwater, when money is the root of all evil, then you you can have a hard time bringing money into your life, allowing it even to be in your life. It will keep you monetarily struggling. That's happened to me personally.
Yeah.
I've discovered that about me, I'm like, wow, what a revelation. I did not know I had such a big judgment about people with money and money as a whole. Money's just bad. When there's people that do incredibly powerful, amazing things with large amounts of money, even
Right.
small amounts of money. It's a
Yep.
tool, but I didn't know that, It took a long time to get real with myself about that judgment and my judgments of people that have money.
Yep.
I don't
And
know if that's a good example.
it's definitely it's a great example. And to piggyback off of that, it'd be just like somebody saying they don't support our channels because they don't like the topic, right? Um, because if they had the opportunity that we had, you know, a microphone, not to say they don't have the opportunity, they chose to do other things with what it took us to get to this level, investment. But
Good
what I'm
word. I
what I'm-
like that.
yeah, thanks.
Investment.
What my point is if if somebody's looking at us right now, maybe it's not so much that they have it in their shadows that, oh, this truth that we speak on our both of our platforms is like stabbing them in their heart, right? Because they don't like that part of themselves. So maybe it's not even that, but let's say they look at it and they're like, wow, look at their quality of production. And if I had access to that, I sure wouldn't be sitting up here wasting time talking about projection. I would be talking about last night's football game or baseball game, or I would be talking about this or that, or whatever it is that they feel like is so much more important. So then they, that now you got that same negative thing going on, that clash, just because they saying that why would they get, you know what I mean? Why do they get to talk about projection and stuff? You know what I'm saying? It's like you
Because
can't
really, the
please
truth
everybody.
is, one isn't better than the other. We could make fun of people that cover football, but that's what they do. It works for them.
Mm-hmm.
And why does it have to be one or the other? Why can't you have both? That's the key.
That's where you get into
If you have a
addictions.
judgment about people that watch football, there's a lot of positive traits to watching football.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun, it's exciting. You're watching your team win. It's a good vibration, and so what? You don't like football, so you just banish anybody that likes football. It really is. And I say this without judgment. This is all observation. We're putting all this
Mm-hmm.
on the table and talking about our own personal experiences with projection and how deep it goes, how
Yeah.
it's happening almost all the time, and we aren't aware of it, even when we're awoke, or whatever people say, we're awake. Um,
Yeah, it's a good thing to maybe piggyback off that, because now we got sports and people watch the sports, like you said, to feel good. That's the hero projection. That's the team winning or losing in some cases, etc. That whole thing there. I was talking about, the people that want to find something to laugh at and how to share that before they'll share something that could change the world. And when I talk to both sides, like all of that, right? When I talk to both sides of those people, and you talk to them and you find out, well, what does it do for you? And they give you all this positive things that does for you. I'm like, well, what does that replace for you? What do you need that for? And they're like, then they start telling you about how it helps them get over their day, or they don't have to think about, the bad week they had at work, or this, that, and the other, blah, 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 and all this stuff, right? And so, because I did a video on laughter, and I'm like, people don't realize that the reason that they, not so much like when we talking now, we're like, we're doing something that we enjoy doing on a topic, we're finding a moment, we're laughing. But those people that are really like always wanting to laugh about something or tell a joke, or they're addicted to laughter, right? And what it is the same thing as being addicted to painkillers. Because
I
when you
love
study
that.
that,
I remember this. I watched some of that. I
yeah,
love that. It's so true.
thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. So, and I'll make this brief. So I want to hear what you got to say about it.
Take your time.
So the brain in that situation, the muscles, and when you laugh and ha ha ha, that bellyache, like in our minds, I could say, hey, that was funny. And to me, that's equivalent of somebody rolling on the floor laughing, right? I'm not, when I say I'm not emotional like that, I mean, even when it comes to funny stuff, like I like to say that was funny. So, but when you're laughing and you're doing all this crunching with your thing, you're actually causing your belly to ache for real. That's why they say I got laughed, my belly hurt and all this stuff. And then your brain releases a chemical into the bloodstream that's the equivalent of a painkiller to numb the pain of your abdominal pain from laughter. So people don't realize that they're seeking the laughter, not so much for the action itself, but to get the dose of the painkiller. And another way to understand as we get into codependency factors and drugs and stuff and addiction, you find out that we're not addicted as a whole, as a whole, human species. We're not addicted to the drug that we're taking, so to speak, as much as we are addicted to the chemical response the body produces in response to the drug's introduction to the body. So that's the same thing. We're introducing laughter. It's going to take the place of the drug. The brain says, okay, release the painkiller in there. And we're like, I feel so much better after I go to a comedy show and laugh for an hour. My whole week, I forget about work being a torturous, toxic place. I forget about the people that hate me. I forget about the fact that I don't want to do this, and because I laughed for 2 hours. Well, yeah, it's like you just took opium.
And it's also a form of avoidance. That's
Facts.
what addiction is. Addiction starts from a base of avoidance. I don't want that. So the pleasure thing in your brain, I forget what Mike called it, but
dopamine,
and but really it becomes a prison.
It is.
The sad thing about addiction is it becomes a prison, because in not wanting, in the resistance factor, it grows a life of its own, as Ayanna Van Sant would say, and fights you back. Mm-hmm. But once you let go and you're with it, I think I saw in one of these seminars my dad did many years ago, where they're pushing up against the wall. What happens when you let go? You just get to be you. That's what's so important about unearthing these projections, because you get to be with them and go, oh, what was the big deal? And you can let it go. And there's just a very liberating aspect to it when you are allowed the full scope of everything that you feel, and you allow it. It can be released and you're done. It's yes, there's a lot to this, but yeah, I really identify with what you just said. That's very yes, because that's why we just have a world of addictions, all these ways of avoiding these things about our self-truths and the truths of all of us, the collective too, as well. That's the thing. We're all mirrors to each other, right? Yep. At any given moment. So, but we're acting like that's not happening. So, and until we get real with that truth, which is what we're talking about here, it's going to continue to control you. It's going to make you want to avoid, make you want to, watch comedy, do drugs, drink, sex, anything you can do to just, no, I don't want that. I don't want that. The hardest thing you will find in life is to sit still and be with yourself. It's really hard. It's very challenging, because then all that clutter and it's it's not in the way, and what's really going on is presenting itself to you, showing you who you really are.
Mm-hmm. And you made a good point there, because that's kind of what I know. I know sometimes I get a little bit winded with my explanations, because I'm used to giving an equation and then people being like, well, what does that mean? And you got to spell it out for them anyway. So do you try to find that happy middle ground? So, but absolutely. So when people ask, like, you're talking about the sports, or you're talking about laughter, you're talking about whatever it is, and you always find that you'll have the people that be like, well, why are you so focused on, let's say if we're going to title it the truth, I know it's, for lack of a better title, why are you so focused on the truth then? And it's like, well, okay, when you look at all the reasons why you are wanting to laugh, or why you are immersing yourself in those games like we just talked about, or whatever it is that people do, right? Some people just want to go for a ride or go on vacation. You know what I mean? It's all really, you start to find out that it's down at the small atomic level of the structures. It's really for the same reasons. And then my question to them is, well, if we just put the work in to address the real issues and fix them, then you won't need to be sedated with laughter, because you're fixing the problem that's causing the pain, instead of, like you said, avoiding that and saying, let me just go laugh about it, laugh about this so I feel better about everything in general, when you haven't done nothing to stop the problem from existing.
Yeah, you haven't. gotten to the root. That's why we've talked about, and I was talking with a friend of mine this morning about this, of when you're judging and everything, and you're wrapped up in that. Oh, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Just it. It's. I guess I just keep coming back to the liberation of it. When you just be with it
Yeah,
instead
acceptance.
of trying to control it. That's why I think in the serenity prayer, the surrendering aspect to that prayer of admitting you don't have control. There's an element of that in there, and
Hmm.
that is okay not to.
Hmm.
And everything is really okay, because it goes back to that meme that you see floating around from time to time. Everything is your teacher. You're exactly where you need to be at every moment, at whatever level of understanding that you have. So I don't know if that, because see, I see how it's all connected. So I have to
Yes,
break it down to where people can understand why I'm connecting these dots. And I'm trying to do it in a way that
I
that will
applaud
make
you for that.
sense. It's constant. The way my mind is always worked. I just, well, this does, oh, wait, that's connected. And then that happens. And you just see the whole
And
thing.
and that's been the presentation all along is okay, so if you've admitted to yourself that this is why you do all of this list of things over here is to counterbalance this, then why not just fix this? Because
Yes.
like you're saying, we're creating the addiction to these things over here, right? And who knows how much time, energy, resources, money, whatever you want to say, goes into managing those what we could label as addictions. If we had invested all that time, energy, money, and resources for some period of time into actually fixing the problem,
The cause.
right?
What all the addictions and everything are symptoms of an underlying wound,
Right. So
a
yeah,
trauma.
I think it totally actually, and then that freedom comes back into play because now you're,
Go
oh,
ahead. I'm sorry.
because
Go ahead.
because now
Yes.
you're not watching, you're not codependent on the game, you're not codependent on the comedy show, but now you can actually enjoy it and appreciate it on a different level because it's not mandatory in your life for balance. Now it actually
Yes.
serves the purpose of adding value instead of just bringing you back to being balanced, if that makes sense. You know what I
Oh
mean?
my gosh. Yes. I love it. I love this. I love this. It's so good. Um, I want to read something that Jeff Brown, I highly recommend his page.
Okay.
Anybody that's watching on Facebook, Jeff Brown, he's a writer and a healer and talks about authenticity. That's his goal. He shares this. And this will get you to think about your judgments about this particular or anything, but I'm going to use this as an example.
Mhm.
What if it's only a nervous breakdown? If you bottleneck and bury the emotions that are trying to come through you, that's what causes the breakdown, the resistance to what is, the stopping of the process before it has an opportunity to move toward realization and resolution. What if something beautiful is actually happening within you? Something that wants to heal and move into full authenticity. What if this is not a nervous breakdown, but a nervous breakthrough, a profound emotional cleansing, a dissolution of the false structures that have ruled your life, a breaking through to the more authentic state of being?
Yes. Yeah.
Goosebumps.
I think you tag. I'm pretty sure you tagged me on that, right?
Yes.
Um. Okay. So let me. All right. So I got this tattoo, and I got my first tattoo when I was like early 20s, right? And it took me forever to figure out which one I wanted to get, and I wound up getting the all-seeing eye, which is on the back
Hmm.
of the dollar, with the
Whoa.
Annuit Coeptus. And I'll tell you why I did that. Oh, you know me, we're always researching stuff anyway. So I was researching that, and the Annuit Coeptus has three translations. He favors our mission, he approves of our undertakings, and the third one, the most rarest translation, was a circuit with the sky is complete. Now tie
Hmm.
that into the factor of I don't call these locks
Antennas.
or antennas. Yes, right, because we're dealing with that energy connection. Now, to make all that make sense, why I said that in response to your passage there is it made me think about how the nervous breakdown, quote unquote, is the equivalent of a short circuit.
Yes.
So if the download was coming down, whatever it is that you were exposed to in the beginning there, where it was giving us examples of you may be seeing this, read that first part again, if you don't mind.
Uh, let's see here.
Because it was telling you like maybe the things you were seeing, or you know what I
Well, the
mean?
judgment about a nervous breakdown, which is what I love. What if it's only a nervous breakdown? If you
Mm-hmm.
bottleneck and bury the emotions that are trying to come through you,
Mm-hmm. See?
that's what's causing the breakdown, the resistance to what is, meaning, no, I'm not mad. I'm not mad. I'm not an angry
Right.
person.
Right. And all
Really?
the stuff that we like we were talking about earlier, get to a point where we find reasons to avoid because we want to be the projection is we're not that. Like we don't need this
The
conversation
judgment
about
about it.
projection, or we don't need the
Yes.
laughter, or we don't need the football game and all this, whatever it might be for whoever's talking about it. It's the short circuit because the download came to you to say, hey, consider the fact that you might need that, or what value could it be, or what conversations could you have with someone else during that time or about that later. You never know, because now you're stopping the flow of what was supposed to manifest in your life because you're resisting maybe some of the doorways going back to the castle. When you say what door are you going to walk into on your life next, you know what I mean? Like you're supposed to go into this door, but you got it locked off because it has, you know, comedy show on it for me, or something like, you know what I mean, whatever it is for the other people. um so it's a short circuit. That's what the nervous breakdown portion of that is. What do you think about
Yeah.
that?
Because, oh, yes. Thank you so much. Of course, that's going to happen. That's what he's talking about. If we have a judgment about having a nervous breakdown, we'll never be able to get to have one. And when you have one, it's such a release. What's happening is you're not holding down all those, what Debbie Ford talked about, holding it all down, holding in your
Mm-hmm.
hands so tight. You're not. You're allowing yourself to be truthful with yourself. I'm not happy. I'm angry that I had a bad childhood. I'm angry that I was treated bad. I'm sad about this. I'm brokenhearted. I'm frustrated. All the things. No, you're just to be always merry and bright. That bullshit. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can no longer fight what you're really feeling, how you've been feeling probably your whole life. That's what a nervous breakdown is. But we're taught it's bad and wrong, and there's something wrong with you, and you have disorders and all these other labels they put on you. When the nervous breakdown is a gift, if you get yourself in the right frame of mind, you're admitting things about yourself. You're not perfect. You know, that's the point. Nobody is. These imperfections, they play a role. They're important. As much as they have a bad side, they have a good side, like the football, like what we talked about. And everything we're talking about here is moving into the direction of the conversation about duality and things. And
Yes.
when we throw the baby out with the bathwater, we throw the bad thing out, but we also throw the good stuff out. That's why the nervous breakdown comes. I can't live that way no more. Can't live with the boarded up rooms in your house where you don't get to be real even with your own self. And if you can't be real with yourself, you're going to have a really hard time being real with anyone else. Because how can you
True.
give them something you haven't given yourself? That's what this is about. That's why we're doing this work. I feel passionately and strongly about.
I agree with you, and I'm actually, it's very timely that you said that the elements, excuse me, the elements of this conversation is moving towards the conversation on duality, because I was literally taking note to say while you were speaking. So when you, because remember, and I get this conversation a lot because I'm the guy that runs around, it's always the perfect day. Like that's my tagline, right? It's always the perfect day. And people be like, really? It's always the perfect day? Really? How can you always say it's always the perfect day? You're always it's always the perfect day, right? What if what when somebody dies? Is it the perfect day then? You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, actually it is. You know what I mean? So, but
I know what you mean by that.
so in some cases more so than others, you don't know. But look, right? But here's what that made me think of when you were saying that, because you were talking about nobody's perfect, right? Which if we just combine that into one word, it would be imperfect, right? So and it made me go back to my infinity, because you guys know me well enough to know by now I process everything in terms of infinity. So we got perfection on this side of the infinity, and on the complete opposite far end of infinity would be imperfection, right? And you have the everything in between. So what it made me realize is, if you're standing in the middle of that, right? Both perfection, the thought of perfection and the thought of imperfection is going to be equally blurry, and if we go to look for them, because they're so far away. So they're going to be so equally blurry that they actually become the same thing. And that's why I say, yeah, it's actually always the perfect day, because even your imperfections are actually what makes you perfect in your blend of who you're supposed to be. No,
Perfectly
everybody's not supposed to
imperfect.
be the, huh?
Perfectly imperfect.
Exactly. That's how we need to transform this, because now here we go. Our projection is, because my point early on in life was the same thing. So I've been through this, and this is how I got to it's always the perfect day. So we're so, just like we didn't want, we had the period where we were like, money's evil. We're slamming the door on everything that could bring money to us. Well, here's what we're doing. We're slamming the door on realizing that we actually are perfect. We're perfectly who we're supposed to be, exactly at this moment, for whoever we're supposed to become in the future.
Yes.
But saying that we're not, it's only hindering ourselves from accepting that we are and wanting to, whatever will happen from that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
Wherever you are, it's okay.
it's
You
exactly where you're
can't
supposed
be
to be.
somewhere you're not. It's there for a reason. There's
Right.
always like that's why the whole everything is your teacher. And that's what you mean when you say it's always a perfect day, because you're right where your level of understanding is for you. And I see this meme floating around all the time. I'm sure you do. Everybody is walking each other home. We're all at different levels
Mm-hmm.
of this understanding in the
Mm-hmm.
walk of life, of understanding what it is to be human and the human experience. And,
Yes.
there is, how can I say what I'm, if you get yourself in the right mindset, you can use that to your advantage. There's always advantages to everything. Good.
Exactly.
There's the good and there's always advantages. And when you stop those judgments, you can see the advantage in the thing that you're judging. And suddenly it's like, oh, you can use it instead of it using you. And you're just fighting it all the time.
Yeah.
It just becomes a tool in your belt. You get to add it instead of bad and wrong and board it up.
I agree.
And
I,
yeah.
there was for the people that are maybe job or work oriented in their thought process. I was working on a project one day, while I was leading the project one day, and I remember saying, well, gets on, so we'll add him to the team, right? And they were like, oh, you don't want him on the team, he's lazy. And at that moment I was like, even better. If he's lazy, I definitely want to talk to him. And I had to follow up with him later on, right?
Yeah, I remember this is so cool. Keep going. I love
Yeah.
it. Yes.
And I'll make it brief, because it ties into this, right? So their projection of what lazy was meant to them, I saw value in it, because I'm like, well, if they're lazy and they want to do as little as possible, I definitely want to hear what ideas they have for optimizing this process. Like, your laziness is going to add value because you want to do the least. Not to say that, you see what I'm saying?
They want to work smarter, not harder. That's what
how I
that
look at it
means.
when people call me lazy. That's what it is to me. I'm like, I'll be working smarter, not harder. But yeah, even if it wasn't a smarter, not harder, just the fact that somebody is calling you lazy means that you're going to want to get it done in a shorter period of time as possible. So what are your thoughts on this?
That's
Boom.
exactly right.
You know what I'm saying?
You'll find the shortcuts, the way to get it done more efficiently, cost friendly, time friendly.
Yes.
Where's the negative in that again? Is that if that's lazy? Maybe that's not such a bad thing.
Exactly.
There's a time to be lazy. I mean, very abusive word, I find, really I would like to do a podcast on just that word, because there's a lot tied to that word, and misnomers and misconceptions about what it is to be lazy, and the work ethic mentality of just work. How about vitality? How about living in the moment? How about enjoying every bit of it, not just only goal oriented, and
Hmm.
uh, people that are lazy allow themselves the freedom to rest. And John Lennon wrote a song about that. It's a wonderful song. People made fun of him. People think I'm lazy. What does he say? Everybody seems to think I'm lazy. I don't mind. I think they're crazy, and he breaks it down. And again, we come back to the duality of things, you know.
Yeah, and that it's a great thing that they actually interpreted it. And this is where we talked about like the devils in the details in that video we did. And because sometimes if you want to split it between like the most high or the universe or God or whatever that individual people call it, and the devil or Satan or whatever they call it on this side, you got to realize that they work together sometimes. So if you want to say that it was devilish for the one person to call him lazy, well, the Most High put that view, use the devilishment. Devil, it's like he called the devil on the phone. He or she called the devil on the phone and said, "Hey, devil, can you make so and so really feel that so and so is lazy?" Yeah, there's going to be a meeting potential come up in about 2 weeks, and I need him to say that so that it'll trigger Pasha to be like, he's lazy. That's how you feel about him. Cool, I definitely want to talk to him. You know what I mean? So that label had to come, but see that the label works to our advantage because we're the interpreters of the truth. So we now to tie that into the duality aspect, that's why you always hear me refer to the infinity. So you can technically take the word infinity out and put duality in, and that's what I'm saying. We have to consider everything from the whole completion, which
Spectrum.
is the opposites. And yeah.
And the elements of both in each. That's
Mm-hmm.
why when you see the yin and yang, you see the black with a white dot,
Yep.
and you see the white with the black dot,
Yes.
you know. And a friend of mine said something, Trish, if you're listening, this one goes out to you,
Hey, Trish.
things aren't exactly black and white, there's layers to this stuff. So that's why the blanket statements and the titles are very dangerous labels, because it doesn't address each individual situation, because there's always an exception to the rule. Every situation is unique in its own. So we need to move in that direction of working with that truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're doing here. So,
Yeah.
but we're coming up on an hour.
Okay.
I love this. I think this is so great. And I would love to move on next. I mean, if we feel like we want to do another one on projection, we feel like we come up with some things after we watch this and everything, we could do that. I'm open. But I would love to move on to the duality thing, because I think that's going to be huge. It
Yeah. Yeah.
explains so much about what we're talking about. It
Yeah. That's gonna be
really,
great.
yeah, because it's everywhere. Once you realize that truth of infinity and the duality of everything, you just have this whole other level of understanding with everything. You start to realize, oh my gosh, wow, this is, anyways. So I would love to close the show with something that you have to say in a closing note with projection. Is there anything else you would like to add before we go?
Well, let me just say first of all, thank you for having me.
Mhm.
It's a great
Ditto.
topic. Um, I think one of the most valuable assets of what we do, especially in our relationship as we do it together, is that everything that we're really talking about. If you go back to conformity, if you go back to devils in the details, if you go back to all of this stuff, we're gaslighting in general. You know, it's all intertwined, and throughout the course you've heard like I laughed and I joked, I was like, oh yeah, you always hear me say the infinity of, so now we're merging into the infinity through duality. So this is that spider web connection that you were speaking about earlier. Everything is connected.
It
and, that,
is.
and that's why when we get into projection, going back to the video we did where we broke down the etymology and known that it was the extraction or the extract of the distillation and the plan and the sketch, the draft. So if we're not conscious, this is why it's so important. I guess this is it. I guess this is that answer to when people be like, oh, why is it so important to you? It's because if you aren't aware of these elements, you can't be aware of how you're being manipulated and controlled in your own life. and you'll actually think that you are in control, or that it's your thoughts and ideas, and you won't understand how someone else is pulling puppet strings on you. So ultimately, that's the work that we're doing here, and that's the freedom. We're cutting the puppet strings, or allowing people to understand how to cut the puppet strings.
And
So thank you.
to know themselves,
Right.
to know
Right.
who you truly are on every level. I
Yes.
love that. Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you so much, Pasha. Always, it's such a pleasure. I'm looking forward to the next thing. To me, I'm just so happy to be talking about these things. It's so important. And I just can't say enough how very thankful I am for you and your time and your energy, and coming and doing these podcasts with me means a lot to me. So thank you. I'm
Likewise.
going to
Right.
keep thanking you. Just get used to it.
I'm equally appreciative. You and G back there doing the work behind the scenes as well too, on the footage and stuff. I
Oh,
appreciate,
yeah. Thank
you
you
know,
so much.
always the perfect day. We
Always
here
a perfect day.
we here because the
Awesome.
people need it.
That's right. And you're not alone, people. You're not crazy.
We need it too. That's why we're up
We
here
need it too. Yes. All right.
I just learned something today myself.
Me too. Every minute now, it's like, oh my God, epiphanies all the time. So we'll be doing
Right.
some podcasts for a while, I think. I don't care. It's all good.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, guys. Have a good day. Until next time.